Hello everyone. This video is part of a series where we are developing a microservices-based social media application. We are using NodeJS as our back-end technology for our services and React for our front end. And our main interest here and our main goal is to learn the microservices pattern. So here is an overview of the current tasks we are working on and our plan for the near future. Of course, there is much more than this, but this is just to give you an idea. In this second screen, I provide a more detailed breakdown of the tasks, so if you want to pause the video and check them by yourself, feel free to do so. We also have a Jira board where we track the progress of our tasks, and we will actually update this Jira board now, because in the previous video we have completed the functionality of sending the email verification or the verification email to our signed up user. If I open NodeMailer, as you can see, there is now a somewhat nice email here with a link. Of course, we will update this localhost :3000 later on, and we still need to implement the verification URL. But for the moment, we are able to send the email, which is what we wanted to implement. I just want to make a comment on the localhost and on the links and everything on the API or the app URL. We will take care of this later on because we will definitely change the structure of our authentication service, and we will implement a notifications service which will be responsible for the emails. So later on we will go back to this and we will take care of it with more time. At the moment, I think if we dedicated too much time here, a lot of the implementation would change in the future anyway. So why not just postpone a little bit the implementation, since now we are able to test this in our local machine in any case. So the send verification email task can be sent to review, and also the appropriate response to the user can be sent to review, because this was an integral part of all the process for implementing the sign up route. Now here there is nobody to review my code, so I'll just mark this as done. But if this was an actual project in a company, there would be someone who would be responsible for reviewing your code and then probably adding some comments there. Now Jira is asking if I want to update the parent issue to match, right? So all the subtasks are done. So yes, I want to update the parent issue to match, and like this we have completed our first user story. Before we continue with implementing our next user story, what I would like to do is to do a little bit of setup regarding continuous integration. So now that we have completed our story UA-1, I can create a pull request to master, right? And this pull request to master is then going to merge my code into master. I could directly merge this into master, or I could even push the master branch itself. I could implement on master, but this is not a good practice, right? Because I'm working alone, it's not that much of a problem, but of course it can get confusing in the future. But I want to follow best practices here. And one of the best practices that I want to implement first is to come to my settings, or the settings of the repository, to the branches option. And I want to add some branch protection rules. What does this mean? It means that I want to protect the master branch from unintended pushes and from unintended merges. That means that I can establish whatever rules or conditions here that I judge or that I consider necessary that must be fulfilled in order for a pull request, or for some exactly here for pull requests to be merged in our master branch. Because there is no one reviewing the code, I will not mark this, but normally we would require pull requests to be reviewed before merging. But one thing that I definitely want to have is that the status checks must pass before merging. And as you can see here, there is already an authentication service check, which I just implemented in the development branch, and we will implement in this video as well. So I will mark this one, that I will require the branches to be up to date before merging, and I will require the authentication service check to pass before merging into master. Signed commits is not necessary, linear history is not necessary, and include administrators. That means that all the configured restrictions will also apply for administrators. Okay, so I will add like so, and here I need to add a branch name pattern, and the branch name pattern is going to be master, right? So I want to protect the master branch. I will create this, and I need to type my password here, which is a good question. I don't remember, but I think I have in my password manager. Exactly. So now we have applied to our branch a check that is going to, or a restriction that is going to require my checks to pass before they can be merged. As you can see, I have an open pull request here, and that's from my development branch. I was simply checking a couple of things. I will come here and I will mark this as closed because this is not relevant. The branch will be deleted soon. So we will update this new, or we will implement these new checks, the CI checks, right? The CI workflow in our UA-1 branch. So let's come to the code. And in GitHub, that's specific to GitHub, if you're using GitLab or other service, maybe Bitbucket, I don't remember any other service, you may have a different workflow, right? A different approach. But for GitHub, I need to create a .github directory, and within the .github directory, create another directory called workflows. And then within workflows, I will create all the different workflows that I want to run in my GitHub Actions. So I will call this one ci.yaml, and here I will write some configuration. Right, it's nice here, at least in this IDE, it's able to recognize the workflows for GitHub, so it's already telling me that there are some problems here that I need to address. But first I want to add a name, and the name is going to be CI, like so. I also want to run this only on pull request, right? So only once I create a pull request, because I don't want to run it every time I push to the repository, just on pull request. And here I need to define a series of jobs. For the moment, we have only one job, the authentication job, which is going to have, let's say, a name of authentication service, like so that I can differentiate. It's going to run on Ubuntu, and I think Ubuntu latest is good enough. And it's going to run a couple of steps. The first step is it needs to check out the repository. Right, maybe I will even do a mini series or so in GitHub Actions just for us to get up to speed, because that would take a little bit of time to explain what each of these steps do. But if you're curious, then by all means, GitHub has a very good documentation on this. You can go and check it. It's quite easy to understand and it's very intuitive. So here I'm saying that the first step is going to use what is called a GitHub action. Now, a GitHub action is a bunch of commands that execute a specific routine in our workflow. And here I will use the actions /checkout at v2. So I want to use the checkout in order to check out the code of my current repository where I'm going to execute the workflow, right? It could be the case that we don't need the code for the repository. I don't know if this will ever be the case, but we will normally need it. So we normally need to pass the uses action checkout at v2. We then will define another function or another step, which is going to be called setup node, like so. Here maybe we could also add a name, right? So just for the sake of consistency, let's say checkout repository, like so. Then we will set up node, and we will use again another action which comes from this general actions folder. In this general actions folder, if we come back to GitHub, we would have GitHub, let's say GitHub Actions, like this. And there are a couple of actions that we can access from the repository. Right, so here is, for example, setup node, and setup node is available to anyone who wants to use this action. It's going to simply setup node, and we can define a version if we want. If we don't define a version, then I think this is going to be set up with the latest. I don't remember which one or what is the exact configuration here, but in any case we can define, let's say, 12 or 15.x. I think we will work with 15.x here, but you can check the documentation for the actions that we are working with. So here, setup node, actions, and then this would be setup node at v2, I believe, exactly. Actions / setup node at v2. And this release adds reliability for pulling node distributions from a cache of node releases, right? So there is a difference. I think there is also v1. I don't know if it's in the distribution, it's in the documentation, but not really. So maybe this already deprecated the v1. We will use v2. In any case, it's the one that they are recommending here. And we can, for example, define our node version. So I'll say with node version, and here we'll execute 15.x. It's the latest node version. I mean, we could try to execute in other node environments if this was required, but for us 15.x is enough because this is a quite simple action or a quite simple workflow. Now that we have node set up, what we can do is we can then create our task to install, or our step to install the packages. And here we need to inform a working directory. As you can see, our repository will have a bunch of subdirectories, right? So we don't have a package.json at the topmost or at the top level directory. The package.json file that we want to use is within our auth directory. So we need to inform a working directory here to this step and say that, okay, look inside the auth directory when you run the action npm CI. It can be npm CI, it can also be npm install prod only, okay, if you want, but I will follow with the npm CI command here. And that's all we need. Now we can finally run the command of formatting, linting, tsc, and tests. And again, we need to inform the working directory to be off, and we will run a bunch of commands. So to run a bunch of commands, we declare this vertical bar here, and then we can pass a bunch of commands, one per line, and this is going to run all the commands. So the first one I want to run is npm run prettier check. Then npm run lint, then npm run tsc check, and then npm run test. So these are all the commands that have to pass in order for me to be able to merge a pull request into master. Okay, so I'll save this file. Let's see here, I'm in the UA1 branch, so that's correct. Now I will add this. Now I think everything is added for commit, and I'll simply commit and say core, or could be feat as you prefer, add CI workflow for authentication service, like so. Now I think it should pass because I didn't change anything in the code. Exactly, now I will push this to the repository and I will create a pull request from my UA-1 branch. Let's refresh this. Had recent pushes less than a minute ago. I believe that now all our actions are correctly set up. Let's compare and create a pull request. So now here we have a lot of commits, and I think that we can do one other thing in our settings. So I believe that somewhere in here, in the branches maybe, or in the options, I don't remember, if I can squash my commits, allow squash merging. I think this is what we want. So we will, exactly. So when merging pull requests, you can allow any combination of merge commits, squashing, or rebasing, and this one option must be enabled. So I would prefer the allow squash merging, because then I believe that squashing is easier. So we will just bring all the commits into one commit and merge this commit into the base branch. So I think this is saved. Let's see how this is going to work here. I don't remember exactly the workflow, but let's give it a try. So I want to provide a nice title here, feed off, and this is going to be related to our user story, implement the sign up functionality. And this will be sign up backend functionality. Now here we would normally write a nice description of what has been done in our application or in our pull request, the changes that were implemented, and we would write the description here. For our purposes, this is not necessary, right? So we will not provide any commits here. Exactly. Now we are running the CI/authentication service workflow. Let's open the page and let's check the progress. I think it should run relatively smoothly. If there are some problems, we will simply update. We will do an amend to our commit, but I think everything should work just fine. Give it a couple of seconds. It still should be installing everything exactly. Added all the packages. Now it's going to run the formatting, linting, TSC, and tests to ensure that everything is correct. This warning, we are aware of it. We are aware of the console.log, and now all the tests. So the TSC command passed. If there is no output, then it means that the TSC command passed. Now the tests are going to start to pass because we know that all our tests pass. And once they all pass, we will get a status of green. Beautiful. So now I have a status of green. And once I come back here, I can finally say squash and merge. And once I squash and merge, then this will allow me to say, okay, all these commits are going to be grouped under this squash commit. And that's enough for us. I will confirm this, and now we have successfully merged and closed lm/ua-1. Now I can delete this branch. Let's come back to master and let's check our code. Nice, so we just have the code updated according to our functionality. And if we want to check the pull request, we can also come here, click on the number from our, oops, sorry, was not this one. So this number here mentioned in the commit, we can follow this to see the changes that were implemented in the pull request. Now, of course, this is not off, so we are not using this at the moment, but once we implement the continuous deployment workflow, this is going to start to be quite useful, especially when we work with a shared package, right? So when we have a shared module that is used by more than one service in our application, then we definitely want to have a shared or a systematic way of publishing. I think that's the word I'm looking for. So a systematic way of publishing and listing the different or the differences between versions in our common module, because then we can easily identify whether there is a version that we should skip or there is a version that we need to do a little bit of work in some of our services. So this will become very useful to have such a structure when we start implementing continuous deployment. For now, this is just best practice, I think. to squash everything in one commit and have a clean message. Now, if I look at the history of master, then we see that there is only one commit, while in my previous branch, we had some 40 something commits, right? So now here, if I click on this pull request, I have a list of all the changes and I have a list of all the files that were updated, right? So this is very nice, it's very clean, and allows us to have a much nicer history once we continue implementation and we have more features. I think that's it for this video. And if you want to receive notifications about the videos that I post here in the future, I'm pretty sure that there will be a lot of videos that interest you, not only related to TypeScript and microservices, but also other very interesting topics such as design patterns for object-oriented programming. Then just make sure to subscribe to the channel and you will get a notification every time I upload a new video. And also, if there is a topic that interests you and you want me to talk about it, maybe there is something I can do about it, I don't know, if there is a topic you want to learn about, then make sure to write it down in the comments and I will check that and I'll take that into consideration when designing the next series that I upload on YouTube. And also, don't forget that I add the link to the GitHub repository and to the specific commit of this video. So in this case, I think this is going to be quite tricky because the branch just got deleted. But in any case, I try to, as much as possible, add the link to the commits whenever they are easily linked to the video, right? Great. So that's it for this video. Thank you for your time and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.